I felt it was inevitable and has been for a number of days, Sam. Clearly, the way this thing was enveloping the world, it became very clear to me that, A, how would you in 4 months bring the world to one particular place? I felt that was going to be impossible. And secondarily, how are these athletes who are in countries right now that are either quarantined or sheltering in place to varying degrees, how are they supposed to train? So I could see this coming, and it's no surprise. But hopefully they'll be able to retool and get this thing going again in 2021, which would not be the worst thing in the world. Or even if you had to, and hopefully that's not the case, if you moved forward and had it in 2022, you'd be coming back to a time when both Summer and Winter Olympics were held in the same year. And that was the case up until the early 90s when they decided to have the Winter Games and the Summer Games separated by 2 years. So I can only hope right now, as do I think Olympic fans, sports fans around the world, that they're able to pull this off a year from now, or a year from July anyway. Well, going back to 1984, which was the first Summer Games that I was a part of, Los Angeles, what I remember is that the city, which had, and as somebody who's lived here for a lot of my life, a ton of traffic, enough air pollution, especially in those years before they were able to get that under control, it became almost utopia. The traffic basically went away, and the smog went away, and there was just this wonderful feeling that permeated the city at that point. So that's number one, and that's what the Olympics really are about, having covered 9 of them, Sam. It's just when the world comes together, it's a good thing. And people say, well, it's politicized, and I know all of the negatives and all of the warts, but it's kind of cool that all of these peoples from all of these different lands can come together at least for 2 weeks. So in Los Angeles, you'll recall, of course, that in 1980, 4 years prior, the Soviets held the Olympics in Moscow, and we boycotted it. So they paid us back. And they didn't come, and most of the Eastern Bloc did not come. But still, the games went on. The competition was terrific. I was a part of the track and field coverage. I did all of the track and field, in fact, with 7 or 8 different color commentators, analysts. And I remember, having covered Carl Lewis, everybody expected Carl to win 4 gold medals, and he did. He didn't disappoint. Not an easy thing to do. I covered the Mary Decker race when she clipped heels with Zola Budd, and that shocked everybody in the Coliseum. And then the marathon, which Joan Benoit won, but then Gabriella Anderson-Sheesh came in from maybe 15 minutes later and staggered into the Coliseum and was listing and was coming in diagonally. And you knew she was in distress. And it was, everybody just held their breath because here was a woman and you didn't know if she was going to make the finish line, whether she would collapse on the track. And all of the officials were out there standing near her, but nobody wanted to touch her. She would have been disqualified. That was an amazing sight. So there were so many different great things to remember. Mary Lou Retton, of course, with gymnastics at that time. The boxing was good. It was a good time. It was a wonderful time, and I think everybody who looks back upon having been a spectator at the 84 Olympics thinks back with very, very fond memories. I think it's a distraction to some people, and that's fine. If you're distracted by free agency and you're distracted by players signing 8 and 9 figure multi-gazillion dollar contracts, that's fine. I'm not going to judge what somebody else's distraction is. I just think, and I know I have some folks who very much agree with me, and including a lot of people in front offices who I've talked to recently, who just don't think the optics are very good. It just doesn't. We have a world crisis. and it's unparalleled. I don't think we've ever had, not in my lifetime, anything ever like this. And we don't know what the end game is. And I guess if you're okay with paying attention to and being distracted by that, fine. That's all fine and good. But to me, Sam, I mean, the psychic toll that this is taking right now is huge. It is wide-ranging. We don't know what the end game is. And I look at this whole situation, and I think to myself, we're talking about flattening the curve, which is great, and hopefully we can do that sooner than later and cut down on the number of cases and flatten that curve. But the distance between flattening the curve and sounding the all clear signal is, I don't know how long. So it's not as if we can say, hey, we sort of have this, we think we have it under control, it's getting better. And then in the sports world, to open up stadiums and expect people to come in and sit down next to each other, I don't see that happening. And I just don't see where the all clear signal is. And I don't want to sound like I'm overly pessimistic right now, but maybe, our temporary national anthem should for at least a while be taken from, the musical Annie, where, the sun will come up tomorrow. And hopefully it will, because right now we're in a dire place. The world or the country has been through crises. I think we took great solace, especially after something like 9/11, people coming together and, families physically hugging and, and everybody had that feeling of, hey, we got to pull together. Now we have to go through this apart. Social distancing. Who ever heard of this until now? So this is where we are right now, and who knows what's around the corner. But hopefully this thing will pass. It will pass sooner than later, and maybe there will be kind of like a feeling of communal love in a way. I mean, I'm hoping there is, where we've all been through this thing. We don't know how terrible it's going to get. And maybe at the end of the day, we'll all come to a realization that, hey, we share one planet. Here we are. Let's enjoy each other.